Well, here it is, my first actual coal-fired steam engine, British design, 5-inch gauge. This is going to be an adventure. So I'm going to do a series of videos on the restoration process for this. This is a vintage locomotive. I don't know when it was made. I'm guessing maybe at least in the late 80s, early 90s, but I just don't know. It hasn't been fired in decades. So this is going to be a fascinating journey. I'll put some pictures up really quick so you can see what it looked like when it arrived. And I'm starting the teardown process right now. I've got to find all of the components, see what they do, see what's broken, what's missing. I'm waiting on some parts right now, so I'm sort of stalled out. So I'll give you a quick tour. Now, on subsequent videos, I'll give you a lot more details, but let's just do an overview for today. Here's the smoke box and the chimney, of course. Here is the lubricator. This will get filled with a very thick type of oil that will get into the cylinders. These are the two side water tanks, and they're connected by a tube, so the water's leveled between the two. Here's the steam dome. This has a large brass cap that goes on it, but this is where the steam will collect. Moving back, this is the boiler. It's covered with a decorative jacket. The boiler is actually copper. Here's our two safety valves, very important. Here is a hand pump for putting water into the boiler. Looking down on the side here, you can see the valve gear is on the outside. Down underneath, in between the wheels and inside of the frame, are two water pumps. There are three ways that this is set up for pushing water into the boiler, and that, of course, is hugely important. You cannot run these boilers dry. Very bad things happen. So there's a hand pump, but it's got the two water pumps underneath, and then this is really cool. Here is an actual operating water pump here, and in future videos I'll show you how this thing works. It's really cool. So this back here is the firebox, and this is all open. I don't know if you can see my fingers, but it's all open in the bottom. There's a grate that goes down in there. Here's the fire doors here, and this is the main throttle. And this is actually a very fascinating attachment for an automatic blower. This is the lever that opens the cylinder valve cocks to get condensation out of the main cylinders. Here's your Johnson bar for reverse and forward. And what this does is it times the length of time that the steam with the valve is being sent into the cylinders. Here's the whistle and a few other plumbing controls here. Our little pressure gauge, and this is where the coal is fed in and burned. Here's the grate and the ash pan. Here's part of the cab, the front and the two sides. This is for the steam dome. Little steps in the rear. Here's the top of the cab. I'm probably going to fabricate a second one of these so that it's more open, so I can have a little bit more vertical access to the controls. Here are the water tank covers. There's a little filler cap. And look at this. This is cool. That's a float, and this is a little gauge so that when you look from the rear in the cab, you can see how much water is in the water tank. Here's the front door to the smoke box, and that's the typical British design there, not the US design. A lot of the locomotives here in the US are bolted shut, but this swings open and unlocks with this center mechanism. Here's my logbook with all the details of what I need and what has to be fixed and what's going on. I've got all tiny parts bagged up here and categorized. Got a book that's on loan to me that I'm going through. This is my first steam engine. I've got a lot to learn. So just for comparison, this is the size of my 7.5-inch gauge electric locomotive. This is a faux steam engine. It looks like a tank engine, but it's actually battery powered with an electric motor. But it looks huge compared to his new little brother over here. And this guy's a lot smaller, but don't be deceived, it's a brute. Now I can lift this myself. I've lugged it around a little bit here in the shop, but I shouldn't be doing that. It's so heavy that if one little thing goes wrong, if I stepped on a screw or a nail or twisted my ankle, I'd be on the floor. This locomotive would be on the floor. So I've got to use a jack or a lift from now on to move it around. It's just too dangerous for me to try and lug it. And all that weight is really good. It'll help the traction of the locomotive. My plan was to at least bring this to a state to where I could display it. My hope is that I can actually steam it up and run it. Perhaps on another video I'll put some compressed air loaded into the tank and we'll run it on compressed air and see if the timing works and to see if it holds pressure. If it holds pressure with compressed air, then I can take the next step, fill the boiler with water and hydro test it, and that way we will know it's safe. And only after that would we consider actually building a fire in it and steaming it up. So we'll test it with compressed air, then we'll do a water test, a hydro test, and then fire it up. Anyway, we've got a lot to learn and a lot to do. So thanks for watching and stay tuned for this whole series.